It is? You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Can I have everybody's attention, please? This is the Committee on Rules, where we have a quorum, Councilman Good, Councilman O'Brien, Councilman Heenan, and Councilwoman Bass. We're going to go a little different than the schedule here because Councilman Squilla requested that we just hold his for a few minutes. So we're going to start with, well, Ms. Marconi, why don't you read the title of the first bill we're going to start with?
Her mic's off. Hey, guys.
All right. All right, I understand Ms. Marconi's microphone wasn't on, but are the other mics on?
Yeah.
They're all on, right? Okay. All right. Mr. Gregorski, why don't you start?
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee and members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski, Division Director of the Development Division of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify.
Get closer to the mic.
Yeah.
I'm here to testify on Bill number 150007, which was introduced in the City Council on January 22nd, 2015, by Councilmember Greenlee on behalf of Council President Clark. Bill number 150007 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by rezoning an area bounded by Front Street, Girard Avenue, Columbia Avenue, Frankfurt Avenue, Delaware Avenue / Beach Street, Columbia Avenue, Girard Avenue, Burke Street, Moyer Street, Fletcher Street, Girard Avenue, Norris Street, Frankfurt Avenue, and Oxford Street. It contains corrective changes to match existing land use in the southeast section of Fishtown, as well as changes which encourage development on the Frankfurt Avenue and Girard Avenue commercial corridors. The bill upzones blocks on the east side of Front Street to CMX3 commercial to encourage the development of empty lots under the Market Frankfurt L. It rezones 2 former mills to IRMX to allow their conversion to residential use based on plans that have been approved by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Lastly, the bill upzones parcels on Delaware Avenue to encourage more density in accordance with the master plan for Central Delaware. This bill follows the recommendations of the city's comprehensive plan. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 150007 at its meeting of February 17, 2015, and recommended it for approval as amended. I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
So if I understand, if this bill has an amendment, or 07?
Bill has an amendment. Map number B7 needs to be replaced with a new B7. I have those amendments with me.
Okay. Has that been distributed? Yeah, that wasn't distributed before.
I was told it was, but
Okay.
I'm sorry if it wasn't.
Okay. All right. Noel, can you get the copies, please?
This is to fix a mapping error that was sent over with the bill.
This is kind of more of a technical amendment,
Correct.
would you say? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Gregorski on this bill? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to testify on bill number 150007? Seeing none, we'll move to our next bill. Ms. Marconi?
Bill number 150050, an ordinance to amend Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Montrose Street, 17th Street, Carpenter Street, and 18th Street.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee and members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski, Division Director of the Development Division of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. Here to testify on Bill number 150050, which was introduced in the City Council on January 29th, 2015, by Councilmember Johnson. Bill number 150050 rezones the area bounded by Montrose Street, 17th Street, Carpenter Street, and 18th Street. The bill changes the zoning of land that has been deemed the location of neighborhood open space. The community has worked with the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority to create an amenity here, and this bill matches that use. The open space is known as Carpenter Green and has been an ongoing project in the South neighborhood for a number of years. The community has worked with the PRA and the local council member's office to have vacant, dilapidated properties demolished and cleared the way for the creation of a neighborhood passive park space. The park is currently going through Phase 1 work on the infrastructure for drainage and utilities and has funding in place to work on Phase 2, creating a landscaped open space. There will be space for programming and a spray ground when finished, as well as other passive features. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission at its meeting of February 17th voted to recommend approval of Bill number 150050. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gregorski? Seeing none. Anyone else here to testify on Bill number 150050? Okay, moving right along. Ms. Marconi.
Bill number 140936, an ordinance to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Market Street, 48th Street, Haverford Avenue, and 46th Street.
Morning, Councilman Greenlee and members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski, the Division Director of the Development Division of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. Here to testify on Bill number 140936, which was introduced in the City Council on November 20th, 2014 by Councilmember Blackwell. Bill number 140936 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within the area bounded by Market Street, 48th Street, Haverford Avenue, and 46th Street. The existing zoning of this block is split between RSA 2 and RSA 3 residential. The proposed zoning changes the non-residential portions of the block to CMX 3 commercial, and the existing residents will remain as RSA 2 residential. This block includes the existing Youth Study Center and the proposed police headquarters Public Safety Services campus. The 46th Street Station area was a focus area in the University Southwest District Plan and recommends this block for rezoning to CMX3 commercial. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 140936 at its meeting of December 9th, 2014, and recommended it for approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
So just so I'm clear, there are some residential portions
There
still
are.
in? Okay, all right. And I know Councilwoman Blackwell is supportive of this. Any questions for Mr. Gregorski on this bill? Is there anyone else here to testify on Bill number 140936? Seeing none. Ms. Marconi, why don't we do the 031 first? Okay, get that out of the way. All right?
Bill number 141031, an ordinance to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by 6th Street, Wood Street, 2nd Street, Benjamin Franklin Bridge Access Road, and Vine Street Expressway Ramp.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee and members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski, Division Director of Development Division of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. Here to testify on Bill number 141031, which was introduced in the City Council on December 11th, 2014 by Councilmember Squilla. Bill number 141031 rezones the area bounded by 6th Street, Wood Street, 2nd Street, Benjamin Franklin Bridge Access Road, and the Vine Street Expressway Ramp. This bill rezones a portion of the Old City neighborhood north of the Ben Franklin Bridge and south of the expressway ramps between 2nd and 6th Street. It contains a number of corrective changes to match existing land use in the area. There is a proposed amendment to the bill to maintain industrial zoning on active industrial property. The proposed rezoning of this area was a recommendation of the City Planning's Central District Plan. Philadelphia City Planning Commission heard Bill number 141031 at its meeting of January 20th, 2015, and recommended it for approval as amended. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, and we do have an amendment for this one, and that was in our packet. Any questions for Mr. Gregorski on this bill? Seeing none. Anyone else here to testify on Bill number 141031? Seeing none. Let's go to our last bill, which I guarantee will not be as short. Ms. Marconi.
Bill number 140906, an ordinance amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by amending Section 14-203 entitled Definitions, and by amending Chapter 14-500 entitled Overlay Zoning Districts to add a new Section 14-516 entitled UED Urban Experiential Display Overlay Control District, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. First, the record will reflect that Councilman Squilla, a member of the committee, is present, and we recognize Councilman Squilla.
The microphone's not on.
Got it. Is that better? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say that this is a process that's been going on for a long time, over a year, working with planning and amendments that have been ongoing up until yesterday for some other input that we received from people throughout planning and the administration. We are offering amendments to this bill, and testimonies, I believe, will be on the amendments of the bill, and hopefully we could hear from the people involved and be able to come up with a conclusion by the end of the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Ms. Marconi, you want to call our first witness, please?
Gary Jastrab.
And while he's coming forward, record will reflect that Councilwoman Blackwell's in the room. And Councilwoman, we already had your hearing on the bill, and there was no problem. Huh? Absolutely. It's not your funeral, right? Okay. A funeral. Okay. We don't want to start any rumors. Okay. Mr. Jastrab, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee and members
Right
of...
in the microphone. You've got a low voice there. You're good. Go ahead.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Gary Jastrab, Executive Director of the City Planning Commission. I'm here today to testify in Bill number 140906, which was introduced by Councilmember Squilla on November 13th, 2014. I should say at the outset that at its meeting of February 27th, 2015, the City Planning Commission voted to recommend that this bill not be approved. The bill amends the Philadelphia Zoning Code by adding a new UED, Urban Experiential Display, Overlay Control District that enables the installation of special advertising devices in a specified core area of Center City. The bill creates the UED, Urban Experiential Display Overlay Control District, in which three-dimensional advertising installations may be located upon the further approval of the City Planning Commission and the Art Commission. These installations, termed UEDs, may be either freestanding sculpture-like structures or may be attached to a building or a wall. UED installations will exhibit full-motion video, animation, and other special effects, primarily through the use of lighting. The area of the UED Overlay Control District includes a 2-block wide corridor along Broad Street from Race to Locust Streets, and a similar corridor along Market Street from 12th to 15th. Within the Overlay Control District, 3 specific sub-areas are identified in which UEDs would be permitted. The Convention Center area, namely the east side of North Broad Street between Arch and Race, the Reading Terminal Market area, North 12th Street between Arch and Filbert, and the Avenue of the Arts area, South Broad Street between Walnut and Locust. For any additional UEDs to be installed within the Overlay Control District, the zoning code would have to be further amended to add new sub-areas. The bill also regulates the height separation distance between UED installations and specified roadways and residentially zoned sites, luminance, hours of operation, and other aspects of UED operation. On January 20th, 2015, the UED concept was presented as an information-only item to the City Planning Commission. While no action is taken on information-only items, it provides an opportunity for commission members to ask questions about a development or a legislative proposal, as well as time to reflect on a proposal before making a formal recommendation. At the January meeting, several concerns were raised about the proposal, and a number of suggestions were offered for modifying the bill. Based on this guidance from the Commission, the staff worked closely with Councilmember Squilla's office, the Law Department, and other bill stakeholders to suggest and prepare a number of technical and substantive amendments to Bill 140906 to make its provisions more acceptable to Commission members who, under the city charter, are charged with making recommendations to the mayor and city council on any zoning-related legislation. These amendments included prohibiting UEDs from being located on city sidewalks and rights-of-way, and if they encroach upon these with wall signs or overhangs, requiring separate legislation authorizing a street encroachment. Removing language that specified processes for locating UEDs on municipally owned properties. Such locations are not prohibited, but should follow city processes that are currently in place. Prohibiting UEDs from being placed on vacant lots or surface parking lots. Specifying that should a UED be placed on a building or wall, it must not obstruct that structure's existing windows. Adjusting the maximum light output during evening hours to a maximum of 500 nits. Adjusting provisions related to the enforcement of digital screen brightness levels by specifying that UEDs must utilize technology to automatically reduce the intensity of illumination relative to the ambient light level, and that this illumination shall not exceed 0.3 foot candles of light above ambient light levels. Lighting levels are to be measured by a professional in this field using a properly calibrated light metering device. Revising the maximum square footage for digital sign faces to a total of 2,500 square feet for freestanding signs and 3,500 square feet for wall signs. Eliminating audio volume from programmed content on the UED installation. Removing the plan of development language of the bill and requiring any individual UED installations to be reviewed and approved by the City Planning and Art Commissions. This proposed amendment further requires that the City Planning Commission's Civic Design Review Committee make a recommendation to the full City Planning Commission to assist in their deliberations. And finally, replacing the public benefit provisions of the bill, which originally called for providing annual funding to specified nonprofit corporations, with an approved plan for physical improvements to the public realm in the overlay district, which such a plan managed and implemented by a public entity. At its meeting of February 17, 2015, the Philadelphia City Planning Commission reviewed Bill number 140906, including these agreed upon amendments. However, given the character and operation of UED installations, the City Planning Commission had serious reservations about the impact that they would have on the public realm. These concerns included the height and size of the installations, the brightness of digital displays, and the overall physical appearance and appropriateness of UED installations. For these reasons, the City Planning Commission recommended that the bill not be approved. This concludes my testimony, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Before I recognize Councilman Squirrel, just a couple of quick questions. First, my understanding is the staff that worked on this bill, and as Councilman Squirrel indicated, it was quite a while that this was being worked on.
Yes.
They recommended approval, is that correct?
Well, the staff worked with the councilman's office and other stakeholders. There were probably half a dozen meetings or more, correspondence via telephone and email to craft some amendments that would be that we thought would be more acceptable to the commission.
Right.
Ultimately, though, they voted not to recommend the bill.
Did the staff, did they make a recommendation?
The staff made a recommendation to the commission
Right.
for approval with the amendments that I discussed.
Okay, all right. And just on your last paragraph there, you say what the commission, and I know you can't speak for each individual commission member, I understand that, but you say about the concerns that were raised, and then in the last part of that one sentence says that the overall physical appearance and appropriateness of UED installations, which would indicate to me that the commission just doesn't want them at all. So even with these amendments, which apparently were brought up at the commission meeting?
They were.
Okay. So basically, they're just against UED, it sounds like.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Councilman Squilla.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mr.
no, please, I'm sorry. The record will reflect that Councilwoman Tasco, member of the committee, is present. And the amendments that we're talking about here, are they, they're still being put together?
Yes,
or-
they're being
okay.
put in right now.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Again, it was down to we had some final requests, and one of the issues were actually approval from PennDOT. to be approval of these UEDs. And so we felt that if PennDOT would have that option to approve the signage, that would alleviate the fears that the Planning Commission has and others may have with the FAM, because they're not going to approve anything that would be a detriment to the community or to the roadway. So that amendment is being added. That was one of the last amendments added by requested administration. So that also is a way. Now, not knowing that that amendment was not in there when the Planning Commission did make their ruling, I don't know if that would affect them or not, since they were against UEDs or signs anyway. But a lot of these amendments that were put in place by recommendation of the Planning Commission, correct?
Correct.
And during that level, my main concern was brightness always. And we went on through several different rounds of nits and low nits at night and nits during the day. And then we came up with measuring of the nits, and there's supposedly a nit gun. I think we may see a display of it in this hearing that has to be directly on the lights in order to get the reading of the nits. And then there was foot candles compared to ambient light. And we came up with something on this bill particularly, and we're going to work with Councilman Heenan on brightness for his bill and all bills throughout the city. But the brightness is the key, because a lot of the concerns we hear from the community is actually at nighttime, sometimes these signs appear to be too bright. And according to this bill, we have 0.3 foot candles above ambient light. We believe that during the process of these meetings that was something that was not too bright. It wouldn't interfere with the quality of life of surrounding people and or businesses. And that was a better way to measure the actual brightness of a sign. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I'm certainly not a lighting expert, but my understanding is that the foot candles measure is what's perceived by the human eye. You know, as the sun moves through the sky, on bright days, on cloudy days. So it's relative to the existing ambient light. And my understanding also is that the 0.3 foot candles is an industry standard that has been developed over time to kind of find a happy medium between the needs for the operation of the device and its impact on the physical environment.
Also, do you agree that obviously the future of signage and proponents of, I guess, advertising sees a change in the direction of signs, where we're going to have more probably digital signs throughout the country, throughout the world, and knowing that we could be on top of that with some legislation and working with Councilman Heenan on citywide legislation, to see that if we be in the forefront of this, be able to measure the brightness is really a key to protecting the quality of life of the people surrounding. And I think in the future bills that Councilman Heenan will pass will really dictate the brightness of these signs, which will make a big difference. And that's why it was so important, I think, during our meetings. And my main concern was how that brightness would affect the surrounding area. So that's where we came up with the 3.3 foot candles for illuminance over ambient light. And therefore, no matter how bright the day is, it would only be 0.3. So it wouldn't matter how bright the nits were, because you're measuring on what is the actual visual light from a person's eye compared to the surrounding light in that area.
Correct.
And therefore, it would never be too bright. And if it would, then the fines would alleviate to the billboard or the sign person accordingly each day that would be in violation. And also, foot candle lighting is an easier way to measure compared to the nits, where you have to be directly in front of the LED lights and would need some sort of maybe high reach or something to get up there and point these guns. So this makes it a little more easier for us to enforce. And I think in the future, this will be the way that we enforce our laws, because anything that we have here in the city obviously is only as good as our enforcement. So we need to make sure, if we do things like this and we're progressive, understanding the future, what's coming up, knowing how to really protect the citizens is the most important part of it. And so that's why we wanted to build enforcement into this bill. And hopefully it'll model that throughout the city. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilman, if I could ask you a question just for the record, and I know we're getting the amendments, but Mr. Jastrow in his testimony goes all over all these points. that was raised that concerned the commission. Are most of those, are all those covered in the amendments?
Yes. Oh, yes. The height was one of the ones that they had some concern with. It was 58 feet. And that was basically because of the actual size of the buildings that were being proposed of this, and it was in conjunction with the building of how the sign would be perceived. Also, one of the requests was to have local artists and architects part of the process. That was also amended into the bill so that local artists and architects will be part of the planning process and the design of the UED, and that'll go a long way to making sure it also needs historic approval, our commission approval. And, you know, these things we thought would lend a hand into letting the commission know that, you know, we're serious, we're not trying to do anything that would be a blight on the city, and also we think it'll enhance the actual, you know, makeup of the city and really draw people to those areas where these UEDs are.
Okay. And Mr. Absar, would you agree with what was just said, that the points that you raised were addressed in amendments?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And
And there are some additional amendments that have been added since we met last, I think, on February 13th.
So it seems like an honest attempt or a real attempt to try to address all the issues with raise, except don't do it at all, right?
It was, yes.
Okay, all right.
And of course, I have to take my guidance from the commission.
No, I understand. I'm sorry, I put words in your mouth. I was trying. Any other questions? Councilwoman Tasco and then Councilman Heaton.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I'm sorry I'm late this morning, but this bill is strictly for the Center City area and this
Correct.
part.
Yes.
Doesn't apply to business corridors, commercial corridors, and neighborhood
No,
corridors.
it would apply only to a corridor along Broad Street and a smaller corridor along Market Street centered on City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Heenan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning. Thank you for your testimony.
Good
I had a
morning.
few questions on the brightness and the measurements in which we measure light with digital displays. And it's been an ongoing. Unfortunately, I know a little too much about nits than I'd like to, and ambient light as well as foot candles. Will there be a digital control in with these digital signs?
I believe that the legislation.
That'll adjust naturally to the actual ambient light that.
Yes, I believe the legislation addresses that by having automatic controls that would adjust with the light.
Right. And as from a staff perspective, are you aware, have you all taken in consideration some of the outdoor advertising sign controls that has been going on for the last 4 years?
Yes.
When creating these types of regulations, because
Yes.
I want to make sure that we maximize our opportunities here with our convention and business, visitors in the center, the convention center, and all, downtown, the Avenue of the Arts. I mean, you have a tremendous amount of foot traffic. You have a tremendous amount of advertising ideas. And I think we as a city have an opportunity to capitalize on some funding, all right, that we can get as a result of this, because I think it is going to set the path moving forward. We have shortfalls with our schools and some of our other key areas within the city budget. And this really gives an opportunity to $2 million, that is set out in the bill for its initial construction, is a little encouraging, because you're not just going to throw up a stick and put an iPad on it where people can charge for advertising. So I just want to make sure we get it right. And is it the administration's position that PennDOT has approved the EUDs here or they have to approve?
No, they would have to approve, I think, by virtue of the fact that some of these installations are on state highways.
So they have not approved it.
And they have not. This legislation just creates an overlay district. It does not. It puts in place the entitlement to install these. It does not approve any single installation at this point. That would be a whole separate
But
process.
you would need a companion piece of legislation to go
Yes.
with it in any particular. So technically, in my district, in the 6th Councilmatic District, once this is passed, I could introduce an enabling legislation for my district in
Well-
specific areas because this has,
This particular legislation is limited only to that core area of Center City. Any additional overlay districts that would permit these devices would have to be a separate bill amending the zoning
Correct.
code.
No, I mean,
Yes.
this allows us to have overlays for
Yeah,
creating
yeah.
this district because you're defining it in the zoning code.
This is one particular overlay, for the Center City area, yes.
So awaiting PennDOT's approval for any type of digital signing, does the administration support EUDs?
For any individual installation, my understanding is that PennDOT
UED.
would need to approve the UED proposal.
So is it contingent upon PennDOT's approval?
Yes.
Review?
Yes, and also the approval of the City Planning Commission and also the approval of the Art Commission.
And what kind of PennDOT challenges might this bring?
My understanding is that PennDOT retains the authority to approve digital signage, all billboards actually, along state highways, and that they have granted to Philadelphia the right to regulate through the city codes those signs, those billboards and digital signs. However, they have not approved these individual devices at this time, and it would require an application of a particular UED installation that they would have to review, as well as planning and art commissions.
Do we need PennDOT's approval since PennDOT has given the city its authority to create?
I'm not
Zoning?
sure on that point. My understanding is yes, it would require PennDOT approval because they're on state highways.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you. Gary, I just have a couple of questions for you. Can you give us some sort of an idea in terms of where Philadelphia stands in comparison to other cities that use these sorts of displays? Do you know of the top 10 cities, which cities do use these displays? And are you familiar with this? Have you looked into it?
These particular displays, these UEDs are unique, and Philadelphia would be the first city to have such a device.
So we'd be the first.
Yes.
Okay. And you said that you didn't, you suggested that PennDOT would need to approve, but have we contacted PennDOT to, know for sure if PennDOT would actually be required to approve the UEDs?
Ms. Cutler, you kept inching closer to the table, so I know you wanted to answer that.
Good morning, Rhina Cutler, Deputy Mayor, Transportation and Utilities. Yes, there is an amendment, I believe, that has been authored by Councilman Squilla, which gives PennDOT the authority to approve any UED that is on a state highway.
Okay, all right. And my last question was, probably more of a comment, is that it seems as if, just, from, reading the testimony here, that, there was a good faith effort, that there were some concerns that were expressed by the commission, and then there was a good faith